I drove 3 hours from Boston to Philadelphia to watch my only son graduate from Wharton Business School. The same school I paid $350,000 for over 4 years. The same son I gave everything to for 24 years of his life. I parked my Mercedes in the visitor lot at 2:30 in the afternoon, exactly 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I wanted to arrive early, to find a good seat, maybe even catch Marcus before he went inside. I'd been rehearsing what I would say to him. Something warm, something maternal, something that might finally break through the wall of ice that had been growing between us for the past 3 years. In my passenger seat sat a gift box wrapped in navy blue paper with a silver ribbon. Inside was a vintage Mont Blanc fountain pen, the kind my father never could have afforded to give me when I graduated from community college 34 years ago. The pen cost $1,800. I'd had it engraved. To Marcus, your future is limitless. Love, Mom. I picked it up and held it for a moment, feeling the weight of it, wondering if he would even appreciate the gesture. Probably not. But I bought it anyway, because that's what mothers do. We keep trying. I got out of the car and walked toward Hanover Hall. The late May sunshine felt warm on my face, and the campus was beautiful, all red brick buildings and perfectly manicured lawns. Families were streaming toward the auditorium entrance, dressed in their best clothes, carrying flowers and balloons and cameras, mothers adjusting their sons' graduation gowns, fathers clapping their daughters on the back with pride, siblings taking selfies together, normal families doing normal things. And then I saw him. Marcus was standing at the main entrance gate, his tall frame impossible to miss even in a sea of graduates. He wasn't looking around like he was searching for someone. He was standing perfectly still, arms crossed, waiting for me. For just a second, my heart lifted. Maybe he wanted to talk before the ceremony. Maybe he'd decided to finally let go of whatever resentment Edward had been feeding him for 3 years. Maybe today would be different. I walked faster, clutching the gift box against my chest. When I got within 20 feet of him, I raised my hand to wave. Marcus, honey, He cut me off before I could finish. His voice was cold, flat, completely void of any emotion except barely contained disgust. I don't want you here, Mom. I stopped walking. People were flowing around me on both sides, but I stood frozen in place like someone had poured concrete into my shoes. What? Dad and the whole family decided you don't deserve to be here. Go home, now. That's when I noticed them. Standing about 15 feet behind Marcus, partially hidden by a group of other families, were Edward and his parents, William and Patricia Ashford, both in their 80s, wearing matching expressions of satisfied righteousness. And next to them was Caroline, Edward's sister, with her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. They were all watching me like I was a show they'd been waiting to see, like they'd bought tickets to watch me be publicly humiliated by my own son. Edward caught my eye and gave me the smallest, most deliberate smile I'd ever seen. It was a smile that said, I won. I looked back at Marcus. Really looked at him. He was 24 years old, 6'2", healthy and strong and educated. He was wearing the graduation gown I'd paid for, standing on the campus I'd paid for, with the degree I'd paid for about to be handed to him in 10 minutes. And he was telling me I didn't deserve to be there. Something inside me shifted, not broke, shifted. Like a switch being flipped from one position to another, from desperate to done, from hoping to deciding. Marcus, I said quietly, keeping my voice calm, even though my hands were shaking. Who paid for your education? He rolled his eyes like I was being tedious. Here we go again. Everything's always about money with you, isn't it? Answer the question. You did. Congratulations. You wrote some checks. That doesn't make you a mother. I felt every word like a physical blow, but I didn't flinch. I'd learned a long time ago not to show weakness in negotiations, and that's what this was now. A negotiation where I held all the cards and he didn't even know he was playing. Who paid for your apartment in Boston? I continued, my voice still eerily calm. Mom, I don't have time for this. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes, and you're not invited. Dad made it clear. Who paid for your car? Jesus Christ, you're embarrassing yourself. He looked over his shoulder at Edward and his family, like he was performing for them. Like his cruelty was something they'd all rehearsed together. Who paid for your food, your clothes, your spring break trips, your Friday nights at bars? Who paid for every single thing you've touched for the last 24 years? Marcus's jaw tightened. You want to thank you? Fine. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for doing the absolute bare minimum a parent is supposed to do. Now leave. People were starting to stare. I could feel their eyes on us, could hear the whispers starting to ripple through the crowd. There's nothing people love more than watching a family fall apart in public. But I didn't care anymore. Let them watch. I smiled, not a sad smile, not a bitter smile, a smile that came from absolute clarity of purpose. Okay, son, I said softly, but don't forget to check your bank account. I saw confusion flicker across his face for just a second before the arrogance settled back in. What? Check your bank account, I repeated. Then I turned around and started walking back toward my car. Wait, what are you talking about? He called after me. I didn't turn around. I didn't answer. I just kept walking. Behind me, I heard Edward's voice. Marcus, forget about her. She's just trying to manipulate you. Come on, let's get you inside. I reached my car, got in, closed the door, and sat there for 30 seconds with my hands on the steering wheel. My whole body was shaking now, but not from sadness, from rage. From pure, crystallized rage that had been building for 3 years and had finally found its target. I'd spent 3 years making excuses for Marcus. He's young. He's been manipulated. He's hurt because I worked so much when he was growing up. He'll come around eventually. But standing at that gate, watching him perform his contempt for the entertainment of Edward's family, I realized something I should have understood a long time ago. Marcus didn't need more time. He didn't need more understanding. He needed consequences. I pulled out my phone and made the first call. My attorney, Richard Morrison, answered on the second ring. Vivian, how's the graduation? Cancel all automatic transfers to Marcus Ashford's accounts. Every single one. Do it right now while I'm on the phone. There was a pause. Are you sure? That's his rent, his car payment, his credit cards, his... I know exactly what it is, Richard. Cancel it. All of it. Now. All right. Give me 2 minutes. I heard him typing in the background. Vivian, I have to ask, what happened? My son just told me I don't deserve to be at his graduation. The graduation I paid for, at the school I paid for. While his father and his father's family watched and smiled. More typing. Transfers canceled. The automatic withdrawals will bounce starting tonight. Good. Thank you, Richard. I hung up and immediately dialed my private banker at First Continental, a woman named Helen Park, who'd been handling my accounts for 12 years. Helen, it's Vivian Ashford. Ms. Ashford, how can I help you? I need you to remove Marcus Ashford from the trust account ending in 7432. Withdraw all funds back to my primary account immediately. That's the education trust with $512,000? Yes. May I ask? No. Just do it, please. Of course. I'll process it within the hour. 2 calls down, 1 to go. I scrolled through my contacts and found my executive assistant, Jennifer Reeves. She answered immediately, like she always did. Vivienne, is everything okay? You sound... Jennifer, I need you to cancel 3 things immediately. First, the lease on Marcus's apartment on Newbury Street. It's under my LLC. Give them notice we're terminating at the end of this month. The apartment you're paying $4,500 a month for? Yes. Second, cancel the Audi lease. Same thing, it's under my business account. Notify the dealership I'm returning it. That's the A5 he's been driving for 2 years? Correct. And third, cancel the Europe trip scheduled for June 7th through June 21st. All bookings, flights, hotels, trains, everything. Cancel it all and request refunds where possible. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Then, in a careful voice, "Vivian, did something happen with Marcus?" Tears were finally starting to come, but I blinked them back. Not here, not now. "He told me I don't deserve to be at his graduation, Jennifer, in front of Edward's entire family, after I paid for everything, after I gave him everything. So yes, something happened, and now he's going to learn what it's like to actually stand on his own 2 feet. I'll take care of it right away. Thank you." I hung up and sat there in my car, watching families stream into Hanover Hall. I thought about going home, but I didn't want to drive 3 hours while this angry. Instead, I opened my laptop from my briefcase and connected to my phone's hotspot. If I was doing this, I was going to do it right. I spent the next 45 minutes creating a detailed document, every expense related to Marcus for the last 24 years, pulled from my meticulously organized financial records. Montessori preschool from age 3 to 5, $180,000. Private elementary school, $215,000. Private high school, $205,000. SAT tutors, college counselors, summer programs, $95,000. Wharton tuition, room and board, $350,000. His apartment over 4 years, $216,000. Car lease and insurance over 6 years, $85,000. Monthly allowances at $3,500 since age 18, plus additional emergency transfers, approximately $840,000. Total investment in Marcus Jonathan Ashford, $2,186,000. Return on investment, being told I don't deserve to be at his graduation. I saved the document as a PDF, then I created one more thing. A simple message attached to the document, set to auto-send to Marcus's email at exactly 6 o'clock tonight, right about when he'd be at his graduation dinner with Edward's family, probably celebrating how they successfully excluded me. The message read, "Marcus, you said I don't deserve to be present in your life. I've decided you're right. Attached is an itemized list of everything I've provided for you over 24 years. As of today, all financial support has been permanently terminated. Your apartment lease ends in 30 days. Your car will be repossessed within the week. Your bank accounts contain only what you personally earned, which, as we both know, is nothing. You wanted to know what your father's love looks like without my money funding it. Now you'll find out. I hope it keeps you warm at night. Your mother, who apparently doesn't deserve you." My finger hovered over the schedule send button for 10 seconds. This was it. This was the moment I chose myself over my son. This was the moment I stopped being the desperate mother begging for scraps of affection and became something else entirely. Something harder. Something that wouldn't be hurt again. I pressed send. Then I closed my laptop, started my car, and drove home to Boston. I didn't cry. I didn't look back at Hanover Hall. I didn't think about Marcus walking across that stage to get his diploma. I thought about the 24 years I'd spent building my real estate investment company from nothing to $12 million in assets. I thought about the boardrooms where I'd negotiated deals with men who tried to intimidate me and failed. I thought about the version of myself who existed before Marcus was born. The hungry, ambitious, ruthless woman who didn't take disrespect from anyone. That woman was still in here somewhere, and she was done apologizing for being successful while Edward failed, done apologizing for working hard while he cheated, done apologizing for existing as a mother who provided everything except the emotional validation that Marcus decided he deserved more than rent money and tuition. By the time I got back to my townhouse in Beacon Hill, it was 6:15. The email would have been delivered 15 minutes ago. I poured myself a glass of Chardonnay, sat on my leather couch, and placed my phone face up on the coffee table. Then I waited. He called at 6:47. Before Marcus called, before that email landed in his inbox, before everything fell apart at Hanover Hall, there was a different version of us. Not a better version, just different. And if I'm being honest, maybe the signs were always there. Maybe I was just too busy building an empire to notice I was losing my son. Marcus was born on a Tuesday morning in October, 24 years ago. I was 32 years old, and Edward and I had been married for 4 years. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Brookline back then, nothing fancy. I'd just started my real estate investment company 6 months earlier with $50,000 I'd saved from working 80-hour weeks as a commercial real estate agent. Edward was working on his third startup, some kind of software platform that was going to revolutionize small business accounting. It never did. I took 4 weeks of maternity leave, 4 weeks to fall completely in love with this tiny human who looked exactly like Edward but had my stubborn chin. Then I went back to work because bills don't pay themselves, and Edward's startup wasn't generating revenue yet. It wasn't generating revenue the next year either, or the year after that. So I worked. I worked while Marcus learned to walk. I worked while he learned to talk. I worked through his first day of preschool and his first lost tooth and his first Little League game. And every time I missed something, every time I wasn't there, I told myself it was temporary. Just until the business stabilized. Just until we had more financial security. Just until Edward's company finally took off. But Edward's company never took off. None of them did. Over the next 15 years, he started and failed at 5 different businesses. Each time, it was someone else's fault. Bad timing, wrong investors. The market shifted. His partners screwed him over. It was never his fault, never his responsibility. And every time he failed, I was there to catch us financially. My real estate investment company grew from $50,000 to $5 million to $12 million in assets. I bought properties, renovated them, flipped some, rented others. I was good at it, really good, and that became the problem. When Marcus was 8 years old, his school put on a production of The Wizard of Oz. He played a munchkin, third from the left in the back row. He'd been practicing his one line for weeks. We represent the Lollipop Guild. I'd promised him I'd be there. I'd marked it on my calendar in red ink. I'd set 3 reminders on my phone. But that same afternoon, I got a call about a property in Cambridge that was about to go on the market. 4-unit building, distressed sale, owner needed to close in 2 weeks. The numbers were perfect. If I could get there in the next hour to make an offer before anyone else found out about it, I could flip it for a $300,000 profit. $300,000, or 1 hour watching Marcus say one line dressed as a munchkin. I went to see the property. I made the offer. I got the deal. And when I got home at 7 that night, Marcus was already in bed. Edward was waiting for me in the kitchen with his arms crossed. He cried, Edward said flatly. After the show, when all the other kids' parents were taking pictures and he realized you weren't there, he cried. I'll make it up to him, I said, pulling out my laptop. I just closed on a deal that's going to pay for his next 3 years of school. He doesn't want 3 years of school paid for, Vivian. He wanted his mother there. I'm providing for my family, Edward. That's what parents do. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Right. And what am I doing? I looked up at him. He was 43 years old, handsome in that aging entrepreneur way, and completely broke. His latest startup had just lost its 2nd round of funding. We both knew what he was doing. Nothing. You're supporting me emotionally, I said, trying to be diplomatic. You're being there for Marcus when I can't be. I'm being replaced, he said quietly. By your work. And you know what? So is Marcus. That conversation happened 16 years ago. I should have listened. I should have heard what Edward was really saying, that he felt emasculated by my success, that Marcus felt abandoned, that our family was breaking apart one missed event at a time. But I didn't listen. I told myself that Edward was just insecure, that Marcus was resilient, that they would both understand eventually. The years passed. Marcus went to an elite private school where tuition cost $35,000 a year. He had tutors for every subject, went to sleepaway camp in Maine every summer, took spring break trips to places like Costa Rica and the Bahamas. He never wanted for anything material, and every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement, I made sure he got exactly what he wanted: the newest iPhone, designer clothes, a car when he turned 16, a used BMW, nothing crazy, but nice. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought providing meant loving. Marcus's 16th birthday was on a Saturday. I'd planned to take him to his favorite restaurant, just the two of us, have a real conversation about his future. But Friday night, I got an email about a potential investor in one of my largest properties. Japanese investor, in town for 24 hours, wanted to meet Saturday at 2. If the deal went through, it would be my biggest payday yet, almost $2 million in profit. I met the investor, I closed the deal, and when I got home at 6, Marcus's birthday dinner was over. Edward had taken him to the restaurant without me. On the kitchen counter was a slice of birthday cake with a note, "Saved you a piece. Dad." I ate the cake standing at the counter and told myself that Marcus understood, that $2 million was worth more than one dinner, that I could make it up to him later. But later never came. There was always another deal, another property, another opportunity that couldn't wait. And somewhere along the way, Marcus stopped expecting me to show up. He stopped telling me about his life. He stopped asking me to come to things. He adjusted to having a mother who loved him in deposits and wire transfers instead of presents. Then, 3 years ago, everything fell apart. I found out about Edward's affair on a Wednesday in March. Not because he confessed. Edward would never have that kind of courage. I found out because I got a notification from our joint credit card about a charge at the Ritz-Carlton. $1,500 for a 2-night stay. I called Edward, asked him if he was traveling for business. He said no. So I called the hotel and asked if there was a reservation under his name. There was. For 2 people. Checking in that night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I got in my car and drove to the Ritz. I walked into that hotel lobby at 6 in the evening wearing a Burberry coat and my best poker face. I went to the front desk and told them I was supposed to meet my husband in his room, but I'd forgotten the number. The clerk gave it to me without question. Room 714. I took the elevator up, walked down the hallway, knocked on the door. Edward opened it wearing a hotel bathrobe. Behind him, I could see champagne glasses on the table and a woman's purse on the chair. A woman who was definitely not me. "Vivian," he said, his face going white, "what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question, but I already know the answer." That's when she appeared behind him. Younger, blonde, pretty in that generic Instagram way. She looked terrified. "Edward, who is this?" "This," I said calmly, "is the wife who's been paying for every meal you two have shared, every hotel room, every gift he's bought you. I'm the credit card." Nice to finally meet the line item. I filed for divorce the next day. Edward didn't even fight it. He knew he had no leverage. I had the money, the assets, the business. He had debt and failed startups and a girlfriend who left him 2 weeks after she realized his lifestyle was funded entirely by his soon-to-be ex-wife. Marcus was 21 when I told him about the divorce. Old enough to understand, I thought. Old enough to see the truth. But Edward got to him first. He spun a story about how I was cold, how I'd always prioritized work over family, how the marriage failed because I was never really present. And technically, he wasn't lying. I hadn't been present. But he left out the part about the affairs. Plural, I found out later, and the financial dependence and the years of resentment he'd been building while living off my success. Marcus believed him. Or maybe Marcus wanted to believe him because it justified the resentment he'd been carrying since he was 8 years old, standing in a Munchkin costume, wondering where his mother was. The divorce was finalized 8 months later. I gave Edward a settlement that was far more generous than he deserved. A one-time payment of $200,000 and ongoing alimony of $8,500 a month for 5 years. In return, he agreed to split custody of Marcus, though Marcus was legally an adult, so custody was more of a formality. Marcus chose to live with Edward. In the apartment, I was funding through alimony. That hurt more than the affair, more than the divorce, more than anything Edward had ever done to me. My son, who I'd provided everything for, chose the man who'd provided nothing except time and validation. I tried to rebuild our relationship. I really did. I called Marcus every week. I invited him to dinners that he canceled at the last minute. I sent him thoughtful gifts that he acknowledged with 2-word texts. I offered to pay for therapy together. He said he didn't need it. The only thing he didn't refuse was my money. His apartment near Northeastern University, where he was finishing his undergraduate degree before Wharton, I paid for it. His car, I paid for it. His tuition, I paid for it. His credit cards, his groceries, his social life, I paid for all of it. And I told myself that was enough. That as long as I kept providing, he'd eventually come around. That financial support was a form of love, even if he couldn't see it yet. That one day, when he was older and maybe had kids of his own, he'd understand the sacrifices I made. But sitting in my Beacon Hill townhouse 3 hours after being told I didn't deserve to be at his graduation, I realized something I should have understood years ago. Marcus didn't want my money. He wanted me. The me I used to be before the business consumed everything. The me who might have chosen the Munchkin costume over the Cambridge property deal. The me who might have been there. And that version of me was gone. I'd killed her myself, one missed event at a time, one deal at a time, one deposit at a time. I'd convinced myself I was building an empire for Marcus, when really I was just building an empire. And empires are cold, solitary places. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. 6:47, right on schedule. I picked it up and answered. "Mom?" His voice was different from earlier. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like panic. "Mom, there's something wrong with my account." I took a sip of my wine before answering. "Is there?" The rent payment bounced, the automatic transfer didn't go through, and when I checked my main account, it says insufficient funds. "But that doesn't make sense because you always—" He stopped himself, maybe realizing how that sentence was going to end. "Because you always keep it filled for me. Because I've never had to worry about money in my entire life. Because I'm 24 years old, and I've never actually paid for anything myself." "There's no error, Marcus," I said quietly. "I canceled all automatic transfers this afternoon, after you told me I don't deserve to be at your graduation." Silence. Long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, "You can't do that." "I can, actually. It's my money, my accounts, my transfers, and I just did." "But the apartment, my rent is due in 3 days. If it doesn't get paid, You'll what? Face consequences for the first time in your life? Have to actually figure something out on your own? This is insane." His voice was rising now, losing control. "You can't just cut me off because your feelings got hurt." "My feelings got hurt," I repeated slowly. "Marcus, you stood at that gate and told me I don't deserve to be present at your graduation. The graduation I paid $350,000 for, in front of your father and his entire family, who were clearly entertained by the whole thing. This isn't about hurt feelings. This is about respect, and you have none for me. I was upset, okay? Dad told me about some things, and I just— What things?" Another pause. "Things about the divorce, about why you guys really split up, about how you've always put your business before family." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me guess. He told you I was cold and absent, that I cared more about money than about you, that the marriage failed because I was never really there." "He's not lying, is he?" Marcus shot back. "You missed almost everything. Every school event, every game, I missed things because I was working to pay for the school events I missed, working to pay for a lifestyle your father couldn't provide, working to make sure you never had to worry about money the way I did growing up. But you're right, Marcus. I wasn't there as much as I should have been. I own that. What I don't own is being treated like I'm worthless because of it." "I never said you were worthless. You told me I don't deserve to be at your graduation. What do you call that?" He was quiet again. In the background, I could hear voices, Edward's voice. "What's she saying?" Edward asked. "Is she threatening you?" "I'm not threatening anyone," I said loudly enough for Edward to hear through Marcus's phone. "I'm just done subsidizing disrespect. Marcus, did you get my email?" "What email?" "Check it, then call me back if you want to have an actual conversation. Not one where your father coaches you from the sidelines." I hung up before he could respond. My hand was shaking again, so I put the phone down and finished my wine. The townhouse was quiet. Too quiet. This was supposed to be a celebration day. I was supposed to be at a graduation dinner right now, proud and happy, taking pictures of my son in his cap and gown. Instead, I was sitting alone in my living room, having just destroyed my relationship with the only child I'd ever have. But the alternative was letting him treat me like an ATM for the rest of his life. And I'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much to accept that. My phone rang again 20 minutes later. "Marcus, again." "I read it," he said when I answered. His voice was tight. "The email, the spreadsheet, all of it. And? $2 million? You're saying you spent $2 million on me? $2,186,000 to be exact. That's everything from the day you were born until today. Childcare, education, housing, transportation, food, clothes, entertainment, travel, everything. You can't use money to, this is emotional manipulation." "Manipulation?" I stood up, pacing across my hardwood floors. "Marcus, I'm showing you facts, math, numbers that don't lie. You've lived a life that most people can only dream about, and you've never paid for a single second of it. I didn't point this out to manipulate you. I pointed it out so you understand what you're throwing away when you tell me I don't deserve to be in your life." "So what? You want me to pay you back? That's insane. I don't have that kind of money." "I don't want you to pay me back. I want you to understand what it cost me to give you everything. Not just in money, in time, in energy, in years of my life spent building something so you'd never struggle. And today, you looked me in the eye and said, I don't deserve to see the result of all that sacrifice. So fine. If I don't deserve to celebrate your success, then you don't deserve to keep benefiting from my money. Mom, please, I don't have anywhere else to go. I don't have any money saved up. I can't pay rent without you." "Then I suggest you call your father, the one who decided I don't deserve to be at your graduation, the one who's been poisoning you against me for 3 years. Let him provide for you the way I have. Dad doesn't have—" Marcus stopped himself, but I knew where that sentence was going. "Dad doesn't have any money. Dad can't help me. Dad's been living off your alimony this whole time." "Exactly," I said. "Your father has nothing except what I give him. That $8,500 a month in alimony, that's what's been funding his lifestyle. The apartment he lives in, the meals he eats, the gifts he gives you that you think come from his love, all my money, every cent. So when he decided to turn you against me, he was biting the hand that feeds him. And you helped." "I didn't know," Marcus said quietly. "I didn't know it was that bad for him financially." "Of course you didn't know, because nobody wants you to know the truth. The truth is ugly. The truth is that your father failed at every business he ever started. The truth is that I carried this family financially for 24 years, while he built his ego on my money and then blamed me for working too much. The truth is that the only reason you've had such a comfortable life is because I sacrificed everything, including my relationship with you, to provide it." I could hear Marcus breathing on the other end, but he didn't say anything. In the background, Edward's voice again. "What's she saying? Let me talk to her." "No," Marcus told him. Then to me, "Mom, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for what I said at the gate. I'm sorry for believing Dad without questioning him. I'm sorry for taking everything for granted. Can we fix this?" "How?" I asked. How do we fix this, Marcus? Do I just turn the money back on and we pretend this didn't happen? Do I keep funding your life while you treat me like an obligation? Do I keep showing up to be rejected over and over again until I'm too old to care anymore? I don't know, he admitted. I don't know how to fix it, but cutting me off completely, that's not going to fix it either. Maybe not. But at least I'll have my dignity. At least I'll know I'm not paying someone to disrespect me. I don't disrespect you. You told me I don't deserve to be at your graduation, Marcus, to my face, in public. What would you call that? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. Listen, I'm tired. It's been a very long day. If you need a place to stay while you figure things out, you have until the end of the month in your current apartment. I already notified the landlord I'm terminating the lease, but you have 30 days. That should be enough time to find a job and a cheaper place to live. Or to work things out with your father. Your choice. A job? Mom, I just graduated today. I was supposed to travel Europe for 3 weeks before I even started looking. The trip is canceled. I canceled it this afternoon along with everything else. Consider it a graduation present, a crash course in real life. You're being cruel. That word hit me harder than I expected. Cruel. Was I being cruel? Or was I finally, after 24 years, teaching my son the lesson I should have taught him when he was 8 years old? That actions have consequences. That respect isn't optional. That money doesn't grow on trees, and neither does unconditional love. Maybe I am being cruel, I said. Or maybe I'm being the parent I should have been all along. The one who teaches you that you can't treat people like garbage just because they've always been there to clean up your messes. I gave you everything, Marcus, and you threw it in my face, so now you get to learn what nothing feels like. I hung up again. This time, I turned my phone completely off. I didn't want to hear it ring. Didn't want to read the texts that were probably already coming through. Didn't want to see Edward's number pop up with threats, or Marcus's number pop up with more apologies that didn't mean anything. I poured another glass of wine and sat back down on the couch. The house was still too quiet. I turned on the television just for background noise, but I wasn't really watching it. I was thinking about Marcus as a baby, as a toddler, as a little boy who used to run to me when I came home from work and wrap his arms around my legs. Before the missed events, before the resentment, before I became more of a bank than a mother. When did it go wrong? Was there a specific moment? Or was it 1,000 small moments, each one barely noticeable on its own, but together creating an ocean of distance neither of us knew how to cross? I must have fallen asleep on the couch because when I woke up, it was dark outside and my wine glass was empty on the coffee table. I checked my watch. 10:30. I'd been asleep for 3 hours. I turned my phone back on, half expecting to see 50 missed calls and 100 text messages. There were 7 missed calls, 3 from Marcus, 2 from Edward, 1 from a number I didn't recognize, and 1 from my attorney, Richard. There were also 16 text messages. I read Marcus's first. "Mom, please call me back. I need to talk to you." "Dad is furious. He's saying you can't do this, that it's financial abuse." I checked the account again. Everything is gone, even the trust fund. "Mom, please." "Fine, don't answer. But you should know that Dad's calling his lawyer." I almost laughed at that last one. Edward calling his lawyer. With what money? Any lawyer worth hiring would require a retainer that Edward couldn't afford. But I read the other messages anyway. Edward's texts were predictable. "You're making a huge mistake. This is parental alienation. My lawyer will hear about this. You can't use money to control our son." The irony of that last one wasn't lost on me. Edward had been using my money to control our son for 3 years, but apparently that was fine. Then there were the messages from the unknown number. I opened them carefully. "Ms. Ashford, this is Tiffany Preston. I'm Edward's girlfriend. I think we should talk." "What you're doing to Marcus is wrong. He's a good kid who made a mistake. You're his mother. Act like it." "Edward told me everything about your marriage. how you were never there, how you chose money over family. Marcus deserves better. I stared at those messages for a full minute. Tiffany Preston, the woman Edward had been sleeping with while we were married, the woman who was 26 years younger than him, the woman who was now apparently playing stepmother to my son and telling me how to be a parent. I blocked her number without responding. The last message was from Richard, my attorney. Call me when you can. No emergency, but we should discuss strategy if Edward follows through on legal threats. Also, I think you did the right thing. That last sentence made me feel marginally better. At least someone understood. I made myself a cup of tea and sat at my kitchen island, looking out the window at the Boston skyline. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably having the worst night of his life. His graduation day, the day he'd been working toward for 4 years, had turned into a disaster. No celebration dinner with his mother, no trust fund, no apartment security, no European vacation. Just the sudden, cold realization that his entire life had been built on a foundation I could remove with 3 phone calls. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wanted to call him back and say it was all a test, that I forgive him, that the money will start flowing again tomorrow. But the stronger part, the part that had built a $12 million business from nothing, knew that would be the worst thing I could do. If I backed down now, Marcus would learn that he could treat me however he wanted as long as he apologized after. He'd learn that my boundaries were negotiable. He'd learn that consequences were temporary. And I'd be right back where I started, funding a relationship that only existed because of my bank account. My phone rang again. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called back immediately. Voicemail again. Then a text. Mom, please. I'm begging you. Just talk to me. I finished my tea and went upstairs to my bedroom. I changed into pajamas, washed my face, brushed my teeth. All the normal nighttime routines, as if this were a normal day. As if I hadn't just blown up my relationship with my only child. When I got into bed, my phone was still lighting up with notifications. More calls from Marcus, a few more texts, one from Edward. You'll regret this. When Marcus cuts you out of his life permanently, remember that you did this to yourself. That text hurt more than I wanted to admit, because he might be right. I might have just destroyed any chance of ever having a real relationship with my son. All for what? Pride? Principle? The satisfaction of finally standing up for myself? But then I thought about that moment at the gate, the look on Marcus's face when he told me I don't deserve to be there. The pleasure on Edward's face as he watched it happen, the smirks from William and Patricia and Caroline. They'd all been waiting for that moment. They'd orchestrated it. They'd turned my son into a weapon to hurt me one final time. And I thought, no, I won't regret this. Because even if Marcus never speaks to me again, even if this decision costs me the only family I have left, at least I'll know I didn't let them win. I didn't let them treat me like I was nothing. I didn't let 24 years of sacrifice get dismissed as the bare minimum. I turned my phone off again and put it in my nightstand drawer. Then I turned off the light and lay there in the dark, listening to the silence of my big, empty, expensive house. The house I'd bought with money I'd earned. The house that represented everything I'd built. The house that was supposed to be full of family, but was just full of furniture and memories of a life I'd worked too hard to enjoy. Somewhere across the city, Marcus was learning what it felt like to panic about money, to worry about rent, to realize that the safety net he'd always taken for granted had disappeared. And tomorrow, he'd start learning how to live without it. And maybe, just maybe, he'd also start learning what I'd been trying to teach him all along, that everything has a price and respect should never have to be bought. I didn't hear from Marcus for 5 days. 5 days of silence. No calls, no texts, no emails, nothing. I told myself I didn't care, that this was exactly what I wanted. Space, boundaries, respect. But every time my phone buzzed with a notification, my heart jumped a little, hoping it was him. It never was. I threw myself into work. I had 3 properties closing that week, and I made sure every detail was perfect. I met with contractors, reviewed inspection reports, negotiated with buyers. I filled my calendar so completely that I didn't have time to think about the empty space where my son used to be. But at night, alone in my townhouse, the silence was deafening. On the 6th day, Jennifer came into my office looking concerned. She closed the door behind her, which she never did unless something was seriously wrong. "What is it?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. "There's someone here to see you," she said carefully. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." "Who?" "Marcus." My stomach dropped. I hadn't prepared for this. I'd imagined this moment 100 times over the past 5 days, what I'd say to him, how I'd hold firm on my boundaries, but now that it was actually happening, I felt completely unprepared. "Should I send him away?" Jennifer asked gently. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to maintain the upper hand, to make him understand that he couldn't just show up on my terms after treating me the way he did. But I also needed to see him. "Give me 5 minutes," I said, "then send him in." Jennifer nodded and left. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the Boston skyline. My reflection stared back at me. 56 years old, successful, powerful, and completely terrified of a conversation with my own son. There was a knock on the door. I turned around. "Come in." Marcus walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there. He looked terrible. His hair was messy, he hadn't shaved, and he was wearing wrinkled clothes, a t-shirt and jeans that looked like he'd slept in them. This was not the polished, arrogant young man who'd stood at that gate 6 days ago. This was someone who'd been broken down. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. "Marcus." I stayed standing by the window, keeping the distance between us. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you." "You could have called. You wouldn't have answered." He was right. I probably wouldn't have. "Sit down," I said, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. He sat. I moved to my desk chair but didn't sit yet. I wanted the psychological advantage of standing while he sat, at least for a moment longer. "You look tired," I said. He laughed bitterly. "I haven't slept much." "Where have you been staying?" "With Dad, on his couch." He looked down at his hands. "The apartment lease ended yesterday. I packed up everything I own into 6 boxes, that's it. 6 boxes for 24 years of life." I felt a pang of sympathy, but pushed it down. "What about your father's girlfriend? Tiffany?" I got a lovely text from her telling me how to be a parent. Marcus's face flushed. "She's gone. She left Dad 3 days ago. Turns out she was only interested when she thought he had money. When she found out he's broke, that everything he had was coming from you, she was out the door." I sat down in my chair. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" He looked up at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not resentment, understanding. "Because I think you knew exactly what would happen. You knew that cutting off the money would expose everything. Who Dad really is. What our life was really built on. You knew it would all fall apart. Is that why you're here? To accuse me of destroying your father's relationship?" "No." He took a deep breath. "I'm here to apologize. A real apology, not the panic-driven one I gave you on the phone. I'm here to tell you that you were right. About everything. I wasn't expecting that. I'd expected him to beg for money, to try to negotiate some kind of arrangement. But an actual apology? That was new." "Go on," I said carefully. "The last 5 days have been the worst of my life," Marcus said. "Not just because of the money, though that's been terrifying, I won't lie, but because I've had to face some things I've been avoiding for a long time. Like the fact that I'm 24 years old and I've never held a real job, never paid rent, never budgeted, never had to make a decision based on what I could afford instead of what I wanted. I've been living in a bubble, and you were the one keeping that bubble intact. And instead of being grateful, I resented you for it." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. Dad told me a lot of things over the past 3 years, he went on. About how you were never there. How you cared more about work than family. How the divorce was your fault because you couldn't be bothered to prioritize your marriage. And I believed him because it was easier than admitting the truth. Which is? That he's a failure. That he spent my entire childhood failing at business after business while you held everything together. That the only reason I had such a good life was because you worked yourself to death to provide it. That every time he bought me a gift or took me somewhere nice, it was with your money. That he's been living off your alimony and taking credit for your generosity. Marcus's voice cracked. And the worst part is that I knew. Deep down I knew. But I didn't want to admit it because then I'd have to admit that I've been treating you like garbage while you gave me everything. I felt tears threatening, but blinked them back. Why did you say those things at the gate? Why did you tell me I don't deserve to be there? He looked down again. Because Dad asked me to. He said it was important to make a statement. That you needed to understand you couldn't just show up to important events after missing everything else. He said it would be good for you to feel what he's been feeling for years, excluded, unappreciated. And I went along with it because I was still angry at you for the divorce, for not being there when I was growing up, for being more successful than him. I wanted to hurt you the way I felt hurt. Did it work? I asked quietly. Did hurting me make you feel better? For about 30 seconds. Then I felt sick. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what I said. I'm sorry for taking your side in the divorce without asking questions. I'm sorry for taking your money for granted. I'm sorry for everything. I stood up and walked back to the window. The Boston skyline blurred through my tears. This was what I'd wanted. An apology, an acknowledgement, some sign that Marcus understood what he'd done. But now that I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. What do you want from me, Marcus? I asked without turning around. I want to fix this. I want to have a real relationship with you, not one based on money or guilt or resentment. I want to learn how to be an adult, how to take care of myself, how to appreciate what I have instead of demanding more. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I want to work for you. I turned around. Work for me? For your company. I'll start at the bottom. I'll do whatever you need. Filing, answering phones, getting coffee. I don't care. I have a business degree from Wharton that I did nothing to earn except show up. Let me actually use it. Let me learn from you. And let me pay my own way for once in my life. I studied his face, looking for any sign of manipulation or ulterior motive. But all I saw was exhaustion and sincerity. If you work for me, I said slowly, there's no special treatment, no nepotism, no using my name to get ahead. You'd be starting as a junior administrative assistant making $38,000 a year. That's barely enough to afford a studio apartment with roommates. You'd have to take the subway to work, budget for groceries, live like a normal 24-year-old who's actually paying his own bills. I know, that's what I want. Why should I believe you? Why should I trust that this isn't just another manipulation? That in 3 months you won't be back to resenting me and complaining that I'm too hard on you? Marcus stood up and walked closer to me. Because for the first time in my life, I understand what you sacrificed to give me everything I had. And I'm ashamed that it took losing it all to figure that out. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise we won't fight or that I'll always make the right decisions. But I can promise that I'll show up, I'll work hard, and I'll never again take for granted what it costs to build something from nothing. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw someone I'd never seen before. Not the entitled child, not the manipulated teenager, not the arrogant college graduate. Someone new, someone raw and humbled, and maybe, finally, ready to grow up. Okay, I said quietly. But this is your only chance, Marcus. One chance. If you waste it, if you fall back into old patterns, if you use me again, we're done. Do you understand? I understand. And we're not going back to the way things were. That version of our relationship is over. If we're going to rebuild, we're starting from scratch. That's all I'm asking for, Mom. A chance to start over. Marcus started work the following Monday. I gave him no time to change his mind, no grace period to adjust. Jennifer set him up at a desk in the corner of our open office space. Not near my private office, not anywhere with a view. Just a basic desk with a computer, a phone, and a stack of filing that needed to be organized. His first day, he showed up 20 minutes early, wearing a suit that I'd bought him 2 years ago for interviews he never went to. His hair was cut, his face was shaved, and he looked nervous in a way I'd never seen before, like he actually cared about making a good impression. "Morning," I said when I walked past his desk at 8:45. "Jennifer will get you started." "Thanks, Mom." He stopped himself. "I mean, Ms. Ashford." I almost smiled, but kept my face neutral. "Vivienne is fine. Ms. Ashford makes me sound like your teacher." Jennifer spent the first 3 hours training him on our filing system, our client database, and our phone protocols. I watched from my office as Marcus took notes, asked questions, and genuinely seemed to be paying attention. It was strange seeing him like this, focused, humble, trying. So different from the person who'd told me I don't deserve to be at his graduation. By noon, I heard him on the phone with a contractor who was getting aggressive about a delayed payment. Marcus's voice was professional and calm, much calmer than I expected. "I understand your frustration, sir, but the payment schedule was clearly outlined in the contract. You'll receive payment within 48 hours of submitting the final inspection report, which we still haven't received." The contractor was yelling loud enough that I could hear him from my office. Marcus didn't flinch. "I hear you, and I'm going to escalate this to my supervisor right now. Can I put you on hold for just 2 minutes?" He put the call on hold and walked to Jennifer's desk. "The contractor for the Cambridge project is threatening to walk off the job." "What should I tell him?" Jennifer looked impressed that he'd asked instead of making something up. She walked him through exactly what to say, and Marcus went back to his desk and resolved the situation professionally. When he hung up, I saw him exhale deeply, like he'd just survived his first real challenge. That's when I realized something. Marcus had never been challenged before. Not really. School had been easy for him because I'd paid for the best tutors. Social situations had been easy because he had money to throw around. Life had been easy because I'd removed every obstacle before he even encountered it. No wonder he'd never developed resilience. He'd never needed it. The first 2 weeks were rocky. Marcus showed up on time every day, which was good, but he made mistakes. He misfiled important documents. He forgot to return client calls. He scheduled 2 meetings at the same time. Normal mistakes for someone new to the business world, but I could see the frustration building in him. He wasn't used to failing at things. One Friday afternoon, I heard a crash from the main office. I walked out to find Marcus standing over a knocked-over file box, papers scattered everywhere. His face was red, his hands were shaking, and I could tell he was about 30 seconds from losing it completely. "Take a walk," I said quietly. "I need to clean this up." Marcus, take a walk. Come back in 15 minutes. He looked at me, and I saw the same frustration I used to feel when I was 24 and working 3 jobs to save money for my first property investment. The frustration of trying so hard and still failing. The frustration of realizing that effort doesn't always equal results. He left. I bent down and started picking up papers. Jennifer joined me, and together we had everything sorted in 10 minutes. When Marcus came back, his eyes were red. "I'm not good at this," he said quietly. "No, you're not," I agreed. "But you've been doing it for 2 weeks. Did you expect to be an expert by now?" "I have a degree from Wharton. You're supposed to be entry-level, Marcus, because that's what you are. You have education, but 0 experience. You know theory, but not practice, and that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere." "You never failed at anything." I almost laughed. "Marcus, I failed at dozens of things before I succeeded at anything. My first property investment lost money. My second one barely broke even. I got rejected for loans 17 times before someone finally took a chance on me. I've fired employees who sabotaged projects. I've been betrayed by business partners. I've lost deals I thought were sure things. Failure is normal. The question is whether you learn from it or let it destroy you. He looked at the neatly reorganized files on his desk. You fixed my mess. Next time, you'll fix it yourself. And eventually, you'll stop making the mess in the first place. Something shifted between us that day. Marcus stopped treating the job like punishment and started treating it like an actual opportunity to learn. He came in early to review files. He stayed late to finish projects. He asked questions constantly about properties, about negotiations, about what mistakes I'd made when I was starting out. And slowly, incrementally, he got better. 3 months in, I assigned him his first real project, a small residential property in Somerville that needed renovation estimates. Nothing complicated, but it required calling contractors, getting bids, analyzing numbers, and presenting recommendations. It was a test to see if he'd learned anything. He spent 2 weeks on it. When he finally came into my office to present his findings, he had a full report printed and bound with comparison charts and financial projections. It wasn't perfect. His math was off in a few places, and he'd missed some important zoning considerations. But it was thorough. He'd actually tried. This is good work, I said, flipping through the pages. Your numbers here need adjusting, and you should double-check zoning before finalizing any recommendations. But overall, this shows real initiative. His face lit up. Really? Really? Do you know how many entry-level employees would have just gotten 3 bids and called it done? You actually analyzed the options and thought about long-term value. That's the difference between someone doing a job and someone building a career. I learned from the best, he said, then immediately looked embarrassed, like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to be that familiar with me yet. But I smiled. A real smile, not a professional one. Thank you, Marcus. That night, for the first time in 3 months, Marcus texted me something that wasn't work-related. Want to get dinner this weekend? Nothing fancy. I found a Thai place with good lunch specials. I stared at that text for a solid 5 minutes before responding. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? A real relationship with my son, built on respect instead of money. But I was terrified of letting my guard down, of opening myself up to being hurt again. Finally, I typed back, Saturday at 6? Perfect. I'll send you the address. Saturday came, and I arrived at the restaurant at exactly 6. It was a tiny place in Alston, the kind of cheap ethnic restaurant that college students and young professionals frequented. Nothing like the places I usually ate at. Nothing like the places I used to take Marcus to when I was trying to buy his affection with expensive meals. Marcus was already there, sitting at a corner table. When he saw me, he stood up. Hey, thanks for coming. Of course. I sat down and looked at the plastic-covered menu. So, this is where you've been eating? 3 times a week. The pad thai is $6 and huge. I've gotten really good at budgeting. The waiter came and took our order. After he left, there was an awkward silence. We'd seen each other every day at work for 3 months, but this was different. This was personal. Neither of us quite knew how to navigate it. How's the apartment situation? I asked finally. Good, actually. I'm sharing a 3-bedroom in Brighton with 2 guys from my Wharton class. It's small, but my rent is only $800 a month. I take the Green Line to work. It takes 45 minutes, but honestly, I don't mind. It gives me time to read. What are you reading? He looked almost embarrassed. Real estate investment books. I'm trying to understand what you do beyond just the day-to-day work. Something in my chest tightened. This was the son I'd always wanted, curious, engaged, trying. But he'd had to lose everything to become this person. Our food came, and we ate in more comfortable silence. Then Marcus said, Dad called me yesterday. I put down my fork. What did he want? Money. His alimony from you runs out in 2 years and he's panicking. He wanted to know if I could help him out once I'm making more money. What did you tell him? I told him no. Marcus looked down at his plate. I told him that if he'd spent the last 24 years building something instead of tearing you down, he wouldn't be in this situation. I told him that I'm done being his retirement plan. How did he take that? He hung up on me. Haven't heard from him since. Marcus looked up at me. I know he's my father and I should probably feel worse about it. But honestly, I'm relieved. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can think clearly without him in my ear telling me what to think about you. What do you think about me now? He considered the question carefully. I think you're the strongest person I know. I think you sacrificed things you shouldn't have had to sacrifice because Dad wasn't capable of being an equal partner. I think you made mistakes. We both know you weren't there as much as I needed you to be. But you made those mistakes while trying to give me a better life than you had. And I think I've been punishing you for 3 years for things that weren't entirely your fault. I felt tears threatening again. I should have been there more, Marcus. I should have chosen you over work sometimes. I should have realized that you needed a mother who showed up, not just one who paid for things. Maybe. But I also should have realized that love looks different for different people. You loved me the only way you knew how. And instead of appreciating it, I weaponized it against you because Dad convinced me it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, though. Not emotionally. No, it wasn't, he agreed. But it was something. It was real. And I threw it away because I was too immature to understand the difference between imperfect love and no love at all. We sat there in that cheap Thai restaurant, and for the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt like I was actually talking to my son. Not the child I'd raised, not the teenager who resented me, not the college student who'd been manipulated against me. Just Marcus, the person he was becoming. I'm proud of you, I said quietly. I know I don't say it enough, but I'm proud of how hard you're working. How much you've grown in 3 months. How you're facing things instead of running from them. His eyes got watery. That means more than you know, Mom. I know I can't fix the past. I can't go back and be at those school events or make different choices. But I want you to know that missing those things hurt me too. Every time I chose work over you, I felt guilty. I told myself it was for your future. But the truth is, I was also scared. Scared of failing financially. Scared of ending up poor like my parents. Scared that if I stopped working for even a moment, everything I'd built would fall apart. You never told me that. I never told anyone. I built this armor around myself, successful, untouchable, always in control. But underneath it, I was just a scared girl from a poor family who was terrified of losing everything. And somewhere along the way, I lost the things that mattered most while protecting the things that didn't. Marcus reached across the table and put his hand over mine. It was the first physical affection we'd shared since before the divorce. We both lost things, Mom, but maybe we can build something new, something better. I'd like that. We finished dinner, and Marcus insisted on paying. His card got declined. He'd miscalculated his budget, and he turned bright red with embarrassment. I paid without commenting on it, and outside the restaurant, he apologized 5 times. Marcus, it's fine. You're learning. These things happen. Everything used to just work. I never had to think about whether I had enough money in my account because you always made sure I did. Now I have to track every dollar, and it's terrifying. Welcome to how 90% of the world lives. He laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. I can't believe I went 24 years without understanding this. I was so insulated from reality. That was my fault. I wanted you to have everything I didn't have, and in the process, I forgot to teach you the skills I learned the hard way. I gave you fish instead of teaching you how to fish. Well, I'm learning now. And you know what? It's hard, and it's scary, and I'm constantly worried I'm going to screw up. But I also feel alive in a way I never did before. like my life actually means something because I'm the one building it. We said goodnight, and I drove home to my empty townhouse. But it felt less empty than it had 3 months ago. Less like a monument to everything I'd lost, and more like a place where I could rebuild something that mattered. Marcus was trying, really trying. And for the first time since that awful day at Hanover Hall, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Hope. 6 months after that dinner at the Thai restaurant, Marcus got his first promotion. Not because he was my son. If anything, I'd been harder on him than on any other employee. But because he'd earned it. He'd gone from filing papers and answering phones to assisting with property analyses and client communications. His salary increased to $48,000 a year, which still wasn't much by most standards, but to Marcus, it was everything. The day I told him about the promotion, he actually teared up in my office. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I know you didn't have to give me this chance. I didn't give you anything, Marcus. You earned it. There's a difference." That weekend, he invited me to his apartment for the first time. I'd been curious about where he was living, but hadn't wanted to push. When I arrived at the 3-bedroom in Brighton, I was struck by how small it was. The living room barely fit a couch and a coffee table. The kitchen was the size of my walk-in closet. But it was clean, and Marcus had clearly tried to make it feel like home. "It's not much," he said, suddenly looking self-conscious. "But it's mine. Well, mine and 2 roommates, but I pay my share." "It's perfect," I said honestly. "Your first real place. That's a milestone." We ordered pizza, another budget-friendly meal, and sat on his second-hand couch. His roommates were out, so we had the apartment to ourselves. It felt strange being in his space, seeing how he lived now. There was a stack of real estate books on the coffee table, a budget spreadsheet taped to the refrigerator, a calendar with work deadlines marked in red ink. This was the life of someone who was actually trying, actually building something. "I've been thinking about something," Marcus said after we'd eaten. "About that day at the graduation. About what I said to you." "Marcus, we don't have to. I need to say this." He turned to face me fully. "What I did that day was unforgivable. I was cruel, and I was wrong, and I've spent the last 6 months trying to become someone who would never do something like that again. But I also need you to know that cutting me off, as much as it hurt, as much as it terrified me, was the best thing you could have done. Because if you'd just forgiven me and turned the money back on, I would have learned nothing. I would have gone right back to being that entitled, ungrateful person who thought the world owed him something." I felt my throat tighten. "I didn't want to hurt you, but I also couldn't keep enabling you. I know, and I hated you for it at first. I really did. That first week, I would lie on Dad's couch at night and fantasize about ways to hurt you back. I told myself you were vindictive, that you were using money to control me, that you were everything Dad said you were. But then reality started setting in. I had to figure out how to pay for food, how to find a job, how to survive without the safety net I'd always taken for granted, and I realized that you weren't punishing me. You were teaching me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I admitted. Watching you struggle, knowing I could fix everything with one phone call, but also knowing that if I did, we'd just be back where we started. You broke the cycle, Marcus said. The cycle of me taking and you giving, and both of us resenting each other for it. And I'm grateful for that, even though I couldn't see it at the time. We sat in silence for a moment, and then Marcus said something I'd been waiting 6 months to hear. "I love you, Mom. Not because of what you can do for me or what you can give me. Just because you're my mom and you've always fought for me, even when I made it really hard to do that." I started crying. Not the elegant, single-tear kind of crying you see in movies. The ugly, sobbing kind of crying that comes from years of held-back emotion finally finding release. Marcus moved closer and put his arm around me, and I let myself lean into him. My son. My difficult, complicated, finally growing up son. I love you too, I managed to say. I always have, even when you hated me. I never hated you. I just didn't understand you. But I'm starting to now. We spent the rest of the evening talking about things we'd never talked about before. I told him about growing up poor, about my parents who worked 3 jobs between them and still couldn't make rent some months, about how terrified I'd been of poverty, how it had driven every decision I'd made as an adult, about how I'd confused financial security with love because money was the one thing I knew how to control. He told me about feeling invisible as a kid, about watching other kids' parents show up to things while I was always somewhere else, about how he'd convinced himself that I didn't care, even though part of him knew that wasn't true, about how Edward had exploited that wound, making it bigger and more infected until Marcus couldn't see anything except his own pain. I wasted so much time being angry at you, Marcus said. Years I can't get back. We both wasted time, I said. But we have now, and that's what matters. The following month, Marcus came to me with an idea. He'd been analyzing one of our underperforming properties, a small apartment building in Dorchester that was barely breaking even. He'd identified several improvements that could increase the property value by 30% within 2 years. He'd done a full financial analysis, gotten preliminary contractor quotes, and created a comprehensive presentation. I want to manage this project, he said, standing in my office with his presentation printed and bound. I know I'm still junior level, but I think I can do this, and I think it could be really good for the company. I reviewed his proposal carefully. It was good, really good. The kind of thinking that showed he understood not just the mechanics of real estate investment, but the strategy behind it. This is impressive work, Marcus. Does that mean I can do it? Under supervision, yes. Jennifer will oversee the project, but you'll be the point person. If you pull this off, it'll be your first real leadership role in the company. His face lit up. I won't let you down. I know you won't. He didn't. The project took 8 months, and there were challenges. Budget overruns, contractor delays, permit issues. But Marcus handled each problem with a maturity I wouldn't have thought possible a year ago. He learned to negotiate, to problem solve, to make tough decisions when necessary. And when the property was finally finished and we put it back on the rental market, the returns exceeded even his optimistic projections. You did it, I told him the day we signed the last lease. Your first successful project. Our first successful project, he corrected. I couldn't have done it without your guidance, or Jennifer's, or the whole team's. I'm learning that success isn't individual, it's collaborative. Now you sound like someone who learned something at Wharton after all. He laughed. I learned some things there, but I learned the important things here, from you. That night, we had dinner at a nice restaurant, not cheap Thai food, not because we were economizing, but because we were celebrating. Marcus insisted on paying, and this time his card didn't decline. He'd been saving money from his salary, budgeting carefully, building his own small financial cushion. I've been thinking about the future, Marcus said over dessert. About where I want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And I want to build something, not just work for your company, though I'm grateful for everything I'm learning here, but eventually build my own portfolio, my own business, something I can be proud of because I created it, not because it was handed to me. I smiled. That sounds like a good goal. I want to do it the way you did it, starting small, working hard, earning every step. I know it'll take years, I know it'll be difficult, but I also know it's the only way it'll actually mean something. You've grown up so much, Marcus. I had to. You gave me no choice. He grinned. Best thing that ever happened to me, by the way. Getting cut off. Losing everything, having to start over. If you'd just forgiven me that day and gone back to paying for everything, I'd still be that arrogant kid at the gate telling you that you don't deserve to be in my life. Instead, I'm this person. And I actually like this person. I like this person too. We left the restaurant and stood outside in the cool Boston evening. In the distance, I could see the lights of the financial district where I'd built my empire, where I'd spent so many nights working late, missing dinners and birthdays and moments that mattered. I'd thought I was building something for Marcus, but really, I'd been building it for myself, because I was scared, because I didn't know any other way to prove my worth. But standing there with my son, my grown, responsible, finally becoming himself son, I realized that the empire didn't matter nearly as much as this moment did. This connection, this relationship we'd almost destroyed, but somehow managed to save. "Thank you, Mom," Marcus said quietly, "for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to." "Thank you for coming back," I said, "for being willing to do the work, for growing up." He hugged me, and I hugged him back, and for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt like I'd actually succeeded at something that mattered. Not a deal, not a property, not a business achievement. But this, being a mother to a son who finally understood what it meant to be loved. Not with money, not with things, but with boundaries and consequences and second chances earned through real effort. We went our separate ways that night, him to his small apartment in Brighton, me to my townhouse in Beacon Hill. But we weren't separate anymore, not really. We were rebuilding something that had been broken for a long time, and this time we were building it on a foundation that would last. Because love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's hard decisions and tough consequences and watching someone you love struggle because you know that's how they'll grow. Sometimes it's cutting someone off because giving them everything is actually giving them nothing. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the person on the other side of that hard lesson comes back, not as they were, but as someone better, someone real. That's what Marcus did. He came back, and so did I.